Okay, so in our previous tutorial we came to grips with the fundamentals of ZBrush, but now we're going to do retopology, which sort of sucks, plus mixing parts and painting, which in ZBrush is is very different. Now I'm here with the same session we had before, so I can do either recent, that will open whatever I had recently opened, or in case you had a catastrophic file crash, this is great, just go into quick save, which is not my case, and I'll open the character here. So here I have that previous character with a helmet that we did before. The subtool I open here is to the right, and I have all of these different parts. I can scroll down, which is nice. If you feel that you need to make them more organized, which tends to be useful, you can select a part like here and create a new folder, and I'll set it to eyes. And I'll put that here, and now I have a folder which for organization purposes is kind of great. Now retopology. I have this part here, right? I do command click to look at it. And this is the topology I have. You'll notice, how do I do that? I press poly F, it shows me the topology, meaning the mesh that makes the creature. And it also shows me these colors, and these colors are vertex groups. They are sort of like the remnants of when they were separate shapes. Now this topology is not that great. What do I mean that it's not that great? It's good for like initial sculpting, but it's not that great for say animation. So in this case you might want to do something that is called retopology. I'll show you something else too. If you press Sculptris Pro mode that I did before, we might be able to do some detail things, but you'll see how it gets lost. I'll use the damn standard brush, and this is how Sculptris Pro mode works. As you can see, it creates geometry on the fly, but this kind of geometry is the worst for animation. Like, it really doesn't work. If I press them standard and I use it on the negative mode, which is by pressing command, it's quite useful for making, I'll do Shift F to make some more detail for the eyelids. Good. Make that teardroppy thing there. And I don't know, if this is a tree, you might want to add something, but most of the detail is gonna get lost anyway. But things like the nose, you might want to make that nose hole, might be useful. Big brush and small brush. The bigger the brush in this mode, the less detail you have, and you don't want the nose hole to be so visible. So I press B and B for move, and then I move this down. I might want to make a bigger hole in the mouth too. And the lips tends to have like a bit of a tip to them. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to do duck lips or pucker faces. And okay, good. Now retopology. I'm going to turn out Sculptris mode, and retopology is a property of the geometry. So I have the subtool menu here, which I can take down, and I can go to geometry, and then I have all of these options. Many are legacy, which is weird. You previously used Dynamesh, which is already enabled, which is that thing where I press Control for mask, and I mask outside of the main object, and it's going to remake it, as you can see. But we're going to use a mode that is a little bit more elaborate, that is meant to be used when you have like sort of your final shape in place, where you're not going to add like any big details, but you want to go for resolution. And this mode is called Z-Remeasure. So I'm going to turn down Dynamesh. I'm going to expand Z-Remeasure. And here it has a bunch of options, including set target polygon count. This is great, especially if you want to work in games. You don't want a lot of geometry. I'll set the target poly count to 10. This stands for 10,000, and this is going to be a base, like the base geometry. Adaptive size, I'm just going to show you the controls that are important. Adaptive size is like how, like I set it 10, right? 10,000 polygons. Adaptive size is like, you know what? If I set it to 0, it's going to be like I'm going to make 10,000 polygons. If I set it to 100, it's going to be like, 10,000 give or take, depending on the shape. Generally, 50 is good enough. Curve strength has to do with using curves for detail, which I can show you later. But anyway, you press Z-Remeasure, and it's going to do a remeshing process, as you can see. And we're gonna get a lower detail mesh, but if I press Shift F to see the detail, you can see that it's a mesh that has better like flow of the geometry. So if I go into press BMB, that is for move brush, I can do much more expressive stuff. So as you can see, it's much better for animation. It has much better character flow. Stuff like smiling and things like that works pretty nicely. As you can see there. Now, another feature of retopology, I'm going to use this line here, and I'm going to retopologize this one. Another feature of retopology is that you can use a tool that is specially used to guide the way your geometry works. So I'm going to use that tool here, which is called, we go into the brush menu and we press Z, and we have Z-Remeasure guides, so ZR. And I press ZR and I press S to make the brush very small, and I will say that I want the geometry to be, and I will draw a line. As you can see, I have topology enabled there. I will draw a line, and this line will guide the geometry. Let's say I want this part here to be a circle. Now, this is especially useful for faces, I have to say, but it might be useful for here. And then I press Z-Remeasure, and it's going to use that guide. As you can see, though, didn't make much of a change. So I will either press Command Z or check the undo bar, and I'm going to set the target poly count to 1 because this mesh is much more simple. Actually, I think I could pull 0.5. And now we have a very simple mesh. How do you start sculpting more detail then? That involves probably one of the most important parts of ZBrush, which are the subdivisions. If we press, we're still in the geometry tab, but if we press divide, you're gonna see that the model gets smoother, but not only gets smoother, it gets more detail. And you might see that in geometry it says 3 in subdivisions, so I can like move between one subdivision level, that being the basis, and 3 subdivision letters. So I'm gonna just dial to 4, and I will like start working on the wrinkles, for instance. I can go into 2, press B, then standard, and start adding more detail I'm going to pause this for a second and come back, but basically start adding detail depending on the level. So I'm going to pause it and come back. And here I shifted into subdivision level 3. So I start adding detail little by little. Again, I like clay buildup as a brush very much. Because sometimes wrinkles are not to be confused with like ridges. Sometimes wrinkles are like in Sharpei dogs, the result of an excess of a lot of skin. They're not holes, right? I'm gonna pause it again until I go back into level subdivision level 4. And here we are on level 4. So level 4, I might just use the damn standard brush because level 4 is a lot of detail. So I can use a tiny brush and very patiently start doing these things. You can use different alphas too. At this level, if I press alpha, I can use sort of stencils. For instance, this one, alpha 60, which seems kind of meaningless until you start using it and you realize that it's kind of great for wood and stuff like that. So I will start using it for the arms. If I make the brush smaller, is more detail, but as usual, try starting with high detail and then move into smaller detail. Generally too, in the end of the model, I've been working on this only using symmetry, right? You might want to desymmetrize this to make it non-symmetrical. Desymmetrize, I just made up that word, but to break the symmetry, because most creatures are not really symmetrical. I mean, most people are not symmetrical. Symmetrical people, not that great. And I will add some of this like wood grain here. It's also good for, I might even need to add more subdivision so I can subdivide again. And so in a way now I had my original wrinkles and now I have my wood wrinkles, or my high definition wrinkles, and we can I'll sort of leave it at that at this for now. Dial down the intensity. Press the X button so I can work a bit with the symmetry. Lips, I mean, this texture is good for so much stuff. Lips tend to have this texture of sort of woody texture. You can use the masks here again to like fix up some stuff. I can go back here and perhaps the eyelids, I'm going to make them a bit more detailed. Remember, I'm not using symmetry, so I might need to do it again. And to break the symmetry, ideally you would do this to the whole model, right? But ideally, if you press now BMB for move, you are in a good position to change some symmetry, like, I don't know, making this branch a bit different. Eyes in general, not that great to break that symmetry because you might need it. But nose, totally. Perfect mustache, not great. And even that part. Good. So now you have, you see what's the main value of retopology. I'll check this other part too, do the same process. So I press Control D for division a couple of times. Another thing to make quick gestures is that, quick detail is that you can check on surface and add noise. It's going to preview that piece, and I can add a noise scale and it looks like a rock. But if I take this feature here, I can make it change some of the details so that it's a bit different, and change the scale. So now it's some sort of volcanic thing. I could press OK now. It's going to show me a preview, and then I press Apply to Mesh. And now this noise is there. As you can see, that detail level is not that great, so I might need to go into geometry and add a couple more subdivisions. Otherwise, it won't have that level of detail. So surface, apply to mesh, and now it's better. So now I have these things. Other tools that are kind of cool to use, but that require something like some settings. I had to, for instance, in this case, delete the lower subdivision level, but this tool you might love. Press B, I press I. All the I brushes are insert brushes, so I can do IMM, steam, and then I press M, and I have all of these mechanical parts that I can use. Again, this is B. I stands for IMM, and I have like prefabs, for instance, IMM model kit, IMM machine parts. Let's do machine parts, for instance. And I press M, and I have all of these machine parts, and if I want to make this a bit more steampunky, I can just add that machine part there. Not sure if I like that one. But some nice steampunky bolt. This one might. Okay, I'll leave that one. And then I press, you notice that it all automatically masks the rest of the mesh. And then I press, in geometry, I press divide. Otherwise, it won't work that well. And now I have like a version of this thing that usually you have to like re-topologize, etc. Anyway, painting now. Painting is a function of, I'll just select the face here. And painting is a function, is a brush, right? So if I go into B for brush and I press P, it's going to show me paint. So I press paint. And when I'm into painting mode, I cannot, it doesn't push the geometry, so it's not a Z brush, it's not a push-pull brush, it's a color brush. And it's based on the general topology. So if I go into, it's per vertex. So if I go into level 1 and I say, I know that this is some sort of like wooden thing. So if I go here, it's going to preview the material, and then I can start painting, and it's going to paint the squares, but it's not really a texture. Okay, but I will paint this part. This is going to be like the dark part of the wood, so to speak. Again, this is command, control, and I have this brush. If you want to hide some elements, you can click on the eye And now I have the back, which is kind of nice. And now I can use a lighter brush and complement some parts. Let's say that, like, I don't know, these parts are a bit nicer, a bit wider. In the case of creatures, it's kind of useful to use, like, amplify the detail using the brushes, kind of like people doing models. The face, things like that. Generally, eye sockets and things like these have redder color, although this is a different kind of creature, so I might make the eye sockets a bit darker. Let's make the mouth a bit darker. If I press shift, you have to make sure that C add is disabled when you're pressing shift, otherwise it's going to affect the geometry. And a good thing about painting, if I go back into painting and I go back into a lighter mode, I can scroll down here to the right menu into masks and check on to create masks by features. So mask by, for instance, cavity. If I press mask by cavity, it's going to auto mask a section. And masks are quite cool because I can now, for instance, press Control and it will change it. But I will change my detail level, so geometry, I will go into level 5 and I will run this again, masking, mask by cavity. I'm gonna run it again so you can see it has a lot more detail. And if I press Control on the mask, it's gonna make it a bit more diffuse. If I press Control outside of the creature, it's going to invert the mask. So if I wanted to do like a darker color, I can just paint here. Let me make sure that I'm doing the face. And if I want to click and turn it around, that means I added a lot of detail to the masks. So it might look a bit better. The eyes, we would have to paint them differently, but as you can see, you can add a lot of detail here. I will do again the mask by cavity. And I will use a lighter color and I will do an RGB intensity a bit lower. So it's just like some sort of extra thingy. The lips a bit lighter, rather. I love this problem of painting living beings in general, which is that you need to paint some like red to make things look a bit more living somehow, the cheeks and stuff like that. But now I think that this is relatively okay. The eyes, for instance, right now they don't have any painting. So I can come into the eyes and let's say we want the eyes white, we paint them white, or we think that they're like green because it's like a greenish monster. We just paint one green, we paint the other one green. Again on paint mode. RGB intensity like stronger. And I paint the other one too. And I'll do the eye socket in the pupil. Of course, this is not like the standard detail, but I'm using the mouse pad, but you can see it's kind of decent. But I'd rather have it without the eye for now. Good. The helmet, you have it here. I just made it visible again, and I can paint it. If it looks black, it's just, you need to change the color a bit. And as you can see, again, this is painting by vertex. I'm gonna use a bit of a more volcanic color and dial the RGB intensity, put it higher so that seems better. And we have a painted creature, a bust of a painted creature. If you press BPR, which is a form of preview rendering, it will show you some shadows and stuff, so you can get like a preview of how this character would look. So pretty fun, right? Then we're going to see how to export this, which is going to be a bit of a pain, but useful. Sorry that it was 30 minutes, but it's a lot of work.